Yeah, so there are two aspects of the humanity, and I love the question because indeed, especially in the early days, people were like, "Oh, this doesn't feel right," and well, we're going to be spending too much time digitally and not connecting, right? Which I think are some of the misconceptions of the whole space we are in. But the way, and I'll come back to that aspect as well. But the way we saw it is really twofold. And then there is an addressing what is the metaverse and what's going to happen to us, right? But first, starting with what we always saw and preached is that in this digital space we can recreate our own identities, and there is no format, right? And you can be anything, really. And I love that idea to say, actually, I can be a dinosaur. I don't need to be a woman or a man. I can reinvent myself, or I can play with my identity in a very free way. And fashion becomes an augmentation of that identity, a way to embellish that identity, a way to build that identity. And fashion itself, because it's not physical, can also go completely crazy, right? Nothing needs to conform with the boundaries of physicality and with the preconceptions that we have in the physical world we live in. And I think in that sense, the whole concept is very freeing, and I think very humanitarian, because we don't need to see each other with the filters that we use right now. And there is this anecdote that I was visiting VR chat, which in itself is a certainly worth the experience, but it's very wacky. And I was in this room, and I think I was the only avatar that was human formed. Everybody else was something completely absurd, right? And there was this guy in a corner as a little bear, and I was like, "What are you doing in this corner? Why did you choose to be a bear?" And I was engaged in this whole conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, I was feeling like a bit bare today, and I'm in the corner because I'm feeling a bit like cocooning." And and I thought, that's, oh my God, this is so funny, because that's exactly how we saw it. It could come and happen, and it's already happening, right? So I think like liberation of your identity and humanizing our interactions by actually not having to use the filters that we use right now as society, and therefore equalizing the playing field and liberating it. The other side, I think, is one that is more down to earth, in the sense that is specific to fashion as well. The entire supply chain of fashion is of course not the most human and clean, and when it comes to the labor wages is quite I would say there is a high disparity, right? And we believe that one of the enabling technologies that will allow us to equalize these systems is blockchain, because it allows to fragment ownership, it allows to create new royalty models, new economical systems, but also, as of suddenly, you don't need to have a lot of capital to launch your fashion brand. Because it's all digital, you only need your computer and skills, and you can launch your fashion label, which means that, again, there is a bit of a Trojan horse going on, where anybody in the world, in principle, can become a fashion designer. You don't need to have grown in the wealthiest areas of the globe and have had access to the best schools to actually become a fashion designer and monetize your passion and craft from it. And I think that creates a whole new equalization model for society, which to me, it really speaks to my heart.
Perfect. I really love that. It's a beautiful answer to kind of see both sides of the spectrum of what it means to be human, what it means to have these certain filters in the real world versus what the new filters and identities can look like outside of that. And I often ask, like, the role that you feel like you play in the wealth space and why it's important. And one of the elements of this I'd love to add is, and for who? Is this for just sort of the next generation, or do you feel like it's possible for there to be sort of this revolution in like our generations? Because often innovation doesn't really get adoption until a few generations later, right? Maybe even post Gen Z. So kind of like, what's this role in this wealth space that you're building right now, and who's it for, do you think?
Yeah, I think right now is certainly for the younger crowd that has, lived through digital as part of their lives, or the very, innovative adopters of technology. So we feel like, especially the Web3 space is very much of a early innovator space. But we are seeing more and more, certainly in the context of fashion, that we are moving into that early adopters. So if you're familiar with the innovation curve, the early innovators is like 2% of the population, and the early adopters somewhere between 10 to 15%. And I think that early adopter curve is going to come through like people like you and me that are very active with our, fashion identities, that are creating content, sharing with the world, that are exploring, and again, any younger generations as well. But ultimately, I strongly believe that it's going to be mainstream, that there is enough use cases around digital fashion that are going to take it mainstream, whether it's because you want to try clothes, physical clothes before you buy, or because there are going to be new models where there is made to order, that you first buy the digital and then you get the physical, or because we're going to have enough of immersive experience where we want to dress ourselves for, right? And 10 years ago, nobody would be thinking that we would be exchanging so many pictures with friends and family on a daily basis, right? It would sound absurd. And look at us, we are exchanging pictures and videos. Sorry, my Siri does these things. Pictures. We're exchanging pictures and videos with each other all the time, and when we talk about,
I don't recognize this song.
Sorry, Siri, shut up. I'll say that again. So, and we believe that, like when we talk about Web3 and digital fashion, is twofold really. There is an infrastructure, it's blockchain, that allows for digital ownership and that allows for new business models to exist. But there is another one that actually, I guess everybody understands, which is the media evolution. When you think about the early days of the web, it was all text, right? It was very text heavy. Then we went into text and pictures, then social media came and we went pictures and videos, actually less text, more pictures and videos. And now we are getting into immersive technology. So it's just another media type. Doesn't mean that the others won't exist, but there will be another possibility. And everybody is quite familiar with having different profile pictures across the different channels you interact, right? Some of these channels, instead of having a picture, you're going to have yourself in 3D, because that is the media you're going to interact with people. And I think that is when it's going to become pretty common for everybody to actually, once you have your 3D identity, that you need to dress. And we strongly believe that our digital wardrobe is going to be bigger than our physical one. That is our belief.
What do you think has been the most exciting thing, or maybe unexpected thing, that you've learned since you've dove into the world of digital identities and digital fashion?
I think one of the most surprising ones is that the speed of understanding took us by surprise. We knew it was going to happen, but even we thought it was going to take more time. And the fact that fashion is the number one industry that jumped into blockchain, that surprised me. I didn't expect that. I expected entertainment would be bigger, for example, than fashion. But actually is the number one industry that invests in NFTs in the last 2 years. And that is pretty incredible. That adoption curve is pretty incredible. And I think the other thing that surprised me every day is our ability to inspire the new generation of fashion designers to pursue a digital fashion career, which again, when we started, the schools were not providing any education around digital fashion. And now more and more fashion schools are providing education around 3D fashion. You can you can learn 3D software, but that is very instrumental. But from there to actually set up your trade as a digital fashion designer, build your community and monetize it, that is another step, is a new career. And I meet every week more and more young designers that are jumping into this opportunity and learning their way. And I find that very inspiring.
for those who may be less familiar with the space, I'd love if you'd share just a few of your favorite examples of practical things that have come out from the fashion space of the world. Because I remember, must have been like early 2021. Balenciaga did this like virtual reality runway. And it was the first time I'd ever seen that. It was this like dystopian environment that you could like go through, and it felt like a video game, and it was just so beautiful. And that was the first time I had really seen a major brand do something really out there. And you're like, wow, this was very unusual and very cool. So that stood out to me. Were there any examples in the last few years that have been, people could look into or learn about?
Yeah, 100%. And I remember the Balenciaga as well, which was really interesting. I think one that I love was a collaboration we did with Vogue Singapore, where the cover of the magazine was a massive QR code. And the QR code unlocked the NFT that you could buy and collect, but also a filter that you could wear the pieces that were displayed in an NFT. And I thought that was so brave for such a traditional media to start to weave this new technology in and educate their readers, which are not necessarily the youngest girls out there, but educate them about these possibilities. I thought that was super brave, and I'm super proud to have done the collaboration with them. Let me think. Another one that I love, and I'm going to say another project that we did because it's probably my favorite project ever, was the first NFT of Adidas, was actually together with the Fabricant, and we gave away a file of a jacket to our community, and we asked them to create art with that jacket. So it was like in the beginning when NFTs were mostly art projects. And we got like more than 300 applications, and it was mind-blowing what people created. And so beautiful that Adidas, was so humble to give away IP. Like, you shared your IP, which is still a big taboo for brands. You shared your IP with your fan community and allowed them to create on top of that. And we had a gallery in the central land with all the final selects, which were about 20, that went on auction in the central land, and the profits were given for projects for girls in tech. So the whole thing was just so beautiful. I just love it. It was together with Carly Claus as well. It was her collection. That's her passion, to promote girls in tech. So it was the whole thing was so pioneering and so well-hearted and so beautiful aesthetically as well, that I love it. Let me think one that is not our project, which is hard. No, I think the Dolce & Gabbana project was also super pioneering, And why? Because it was the first one that had a physical element attached to the NFT. I think it was the first one that actually really brought that Web3 bro community into fashion, literally flew them into this magical world of fashion and almost educated the Web3 community about fashion, right? About the beauty, about the storytelling, about the craftsmanship. And it was, and of course they sold for, I think, 6 million back then, with physical products attached. And I think in its own also was a landmark in the fashion space. And I forgot to mention, talking about landmarks, we were the first fashion item on chain in 2019, and we sold a dress for 54 Ether back then, together with Dapper Labs, and that was a landmark on its own.
I love that. I was just doing some research again because I couldn't quite remember the number from the Dolce & Gabbana tiara, but there was a very beautifully crafted tiara that I think the NFT itself sold for $300,000, and I think the whole collection sold for almost 6 million. So that was a very landmark moment of the concept of craftsmanship, but then also these digital objects that went alongside these items. Really beautiful examples. When you think about advice you would give to somebody getting started, I think whether you're a fashion designer or consumer, how would you navigate this space? How do you decide, which items you buy, and also when you invest in learning about digital technologies, especially in the world of AI that we're seeing more and more, this sort of auto-generated content and maybe proliferation of potentially designs and objects that may come out into the world. How do you craftsmanship that's so core to fashion in a world where like AI may generate all the new designs?
I love that question because I see it myself and like, wow, this is looking better and better, right? Um, you know, I think in every craft there are the experts. Like, look at all of us. We can all make photography these days. There are tons of tools and filters and stuff that make our photography better and better, right? But I certainly can distinguish my photography of a professional photographer. And there is almost like a whole retro going on that people are going back to film rather than digital for the beauty of the craft, like just like going back to vinyl versus streaming music. So I think there were always going to be the experts, and there were always going to be mainstream tools, and there will be people also building from mainstream tools expert tools, right? And so I think, yes, there is a lot of opportunity on those mainstream tools that are going to enable us to free up our creativity and try out. But I believe that there is always the people that are true professionals, and the eye can see and the emotion can be felt in a different way when it's done by the professionals than the amateurs. That has been like that forever.
It's so true, that like idea of craftsmanship, expertise, like you can truly feel the difference. And I wonder if actually that's going to become what is more valuable and defined as more valuable, is that, perception of human touch, or actually verification of human touch, maybe. So yeah, fascinating. I've loved this conversation so much. How can we stay in touch with you personally on your journey as a builder in this space, and then the Fabricant as you emerge into this new metaverse?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I also love the conversation, could stay here forever. For the Fabricant, our handles in both Twitter and Instagram are at the Fabricant, so that's very simple. For me, you can find me in LinkedIn, it's Adriana Hoppenbrouwer, or you can find me in Twitter. That's probably the best ones, and my Twitter account is also Adriana Hoppenb1, something very similar. I've been on Twitter forever, so I still use my own name, which is weird, but you can find me there in Twitter as well, and it will be my pleasure to interact further.
I love that. We will definitely link that in the transcript. I also have been on Twitter forever, so it's my actual name, which is unusual. I love that you pointed that out. And we'll definitely be following along. Thank you so much for such a conversation and all the beauty that you're creating in this space. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Same here.